And we are at another episode of Logging In, but this Logging In is going to be unlike any other episode because this is going to be our fast-paced episode. We don't even have opening music. We don't have closing music. We don't have anything because basically, as far as what's going on in Techie's personal life, is Passover is taking place tomorrow night. So as a result, everybody's in cleaning mode, and we just wanted to kind of get this stuff in as we could. And we've got a baby that's about to hit the record button, which means that we were going to lose the audio, but we'll get that going. But
Oh
Kelly, you're there,
no.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the
Yeah.
hecticness of the holidays. So essentially, the way we're gonna go is we're just gonna ram through these, at least so that there's
Okay.
something for somebody. And then essentially, like when I say time's up, we just move on to the next one because that's the kind of night we're having. So yeah,
All
get
good.
us
All
started.
good. Me?
Yeah, you. This is all
All
you.
right.
I'm
All
I'm
right.
gonna need your help through this because then I have to go back to scrubbing the
Okay.
oven and doing all the things that you need to do to
Okay.
clean the house.
Okay. All right. So let's get to it. So piggybacking off of the story that you mentioned, the topic you mentioned during the last episode or a previous episode about the AI schools, with
Yep.
the students will be working 2 hours a day. So a new private school planned to open is planned to open in Chicago using the AI instead of traditional teachers for academic instruction. The students would spend, as you mentioned, 2 hours a day on AI powered lessons, then adjust to that will adjust in real time in their learning pace, excuse me. The rest of the day they're going to focus on things like communication, entrepreneurship, and life skills, basically what schools don't always prioritize. The tuition for this is 55,000 a year, which immediately raised questions about who is this really for. Supporters said that this could change the future, make it more efficient and more personalized as far as learning goes. But critics push back, saying AI can't replace human teachers, especially when it comes to emotional development and real connection. So it really becomes a bigger conversation about whether education is evolving or just becoming more exclusive. Um, Now, in this economic situation, the 55,000 a year for the tuition, it's sort of like a private school. Well, it is. It's called a new private school, is what they're dubbing it as. So, quite interesting. 2 hours a day, and the rest of the day is focused on communication, entrepreneurship, and life skills. Things that didn't take place when I was in school, and I went to private schools. But yeah, that's the first story, and looks like the first launch will be in Chicago, Illinois. So yeah, more on that to come. That's going to be
But
interesting.
but but this is what I've been talking about the entire time.
Yeah, yeah.
And essentially, like
Mm-hmm.
here's the thing is that there is an Instagram account that if you have not heard about, or at least the website or how the whole concept or whatever, it's called New Emerging King. And essentially, what they're doing is they're
Mm-mm.
teaching the
Mm-hmm.
kids how boys should know how to deal with restaurant conflict and setting up appointments and how gas stations work. Like, literally, they're having kids go,
What?
yes,
Really?
yes, how to change oil in a car. And it's funny, the comments are great because people are sitting there and they're just saying, oh my goodness, my 40-year-old spouse needs your school. And like, why isn't I think it's in Georgia, I believe. This particular
Really?
yes, but it's done by King Randall. The guy has 637,000 followers on Instagram alone. And the
Oh
name of
my
the school
goodness.
is The X for Boys.
The what?
The X for Boys. So THE and then the letter X
Uh-huh.
FORBOYS.org.
Uh, oh wow. You know, I can't even say I'm mad at that because how many times have we heard things like, oh, they don't set the kids up for the real world. They should have been teaching kids about finance and how to balance checkbooks. Back
Yep.
in the day, checkbooks were a thing that today it's all digital. But I'm just saying there was always talk about they're not setting up the kids for the real world.
Yeah.
And it looks like that's exactly what is taking place at this time, what they're trying to
At
get
that
into.
particular at
Quite
that particular
interesting.
school. Yeah. No, so that's kind of the
Yeah.
reverse of the AI that we've been discussing as well. But essentially
Mm-hmm.
that that came to mind when you were going and mentioning about life skills. There's a stronger emphasis on life
Mm-hmm.
skills, and all these critics that are going and saying that the AI isn't teaching teaching right because you need a teacher and all this other things. 100% right, but at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
are kids even learning in the first place? So, like, what's the
Mm.
difference?
Yeah. Yeah, quite interesting. I wonder how I would feel if I was a parent of a kid that was still in school and I had an extra 55,000, to spend on a, school tuition for something like that. I wonder, you
Right.
know, interesting,
Right, but what's interesting about the
interesting.
new emerging king is it's a nonprofit. So if you go and you go and want to support the idea of boys learning how to be boys, essentially
Mm-hmm.
you can get a tax deduction.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
Many
should we
changes
move
on the
on to the
way.
next story, or do you want to kind of
Yeah.
pile this on? How do you want to do this? Because we have to keep going.
No, we could jump. We could jump. Well, let's
Let's
look at the
jump.
marijuana mental health study. So, two major studies looked at decades of research and found no solid evidence that marijuana helps treat anxiety, depression, or PTSD. That's significant because those are some of the most common reasons people say they use it. The research included high quality clinical trials, so this wasn't just an opinion; it was considered a gold standard data. At the same time, though, usage for mental health is still increasing, even without strong proof it works. Experts also warn that there are real risks, especially for young people or those already dealing with mental health conditions, including higher chances of psychosis and worsening symptoms. What's interesting is that many states still approve medical marijuana for these conditions. So there's a clear disconnect between what people believe is helpful and what the science is actually showing. So things like this just make me think about, how things come out years later. As they said, they did two major studies looking at decades of research. Well, decades ago seems like, medical marijuana was, an answered prayer depending on the situation. And now here it is saying there's not even solid evidence that it even helps with anxiety, depression, or PTSD. Now, I know people who have anxiety issues and they do what is the other one? CBD to calm themselves, and they say it calms their nerves. Now, so I don't know if it depends on the person. I don't know what evidence they're looking at, but I just find it interesting that after all of these years, I'd say in the last over 10 years, I remember having the conversation for people that have cancer, people that have again anxiety issues, um people that have seizures, all these different situations, and they talk about how medical marijuana has been so helpful, and now they're saying there's not even any evidence. Well, I'm like, well, was it evidence 2 decades ago? It's very weird.
No, no.
Not two
Here's the
decades,
thing.
decades, but
Here's the
decades away.
thing.
Uh huh.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Like there are things right now that essentially like, and I'm sorry to bring up like the whole COVID thing, but they're going and
Yeah.
they vilified a bunch of people about, and then there's all these people that are wondering if in 20 years from now, all the people that were going and saying I'm not wearing a mask, what if the science goes in and shows that that actually hurts you if you wore a mask? I'm not saying that is or isn't. I'm just giving an example of something where it's
Yeah.
like people in the moment will be like, "Yes, you wear a mask," and then 20 years from now, it's like, "Do you realize that you will lose 20 years of life if you wear a mask for that long period of time?"
My gosh, how devastating would that be? And it's very interesting because if they are saying now two major studies looked at decades of research, well, what did you find decades ago that introduced medical marijuana as something that was helpful? How is it decades later there's no solid evidence that it is helpful for anxiety, depression, or PTSD? Well,
Right.
what is it helpful for then?
Well,
You know what I mean?
here's the thing that drives me nuts is because there's been all kinds of medical history before the medical doctors came in that went and people had ways of solving certain ailments and issues, etc., etc. I mean, is it a coincidence? I don't know. But essentially, then you've got all these doctors that come in and go and say, hey, instead of using this thing that you can grow from the ground, go for this
Mm-hmm.
thing that we did in a lab that we spent millions of dollars of research and we're going to receive a profit for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And heavily tax it too.
Right.
It's a trip. It's
Right.
a trip.
So just kind of
Yeah.
think about that element where essentially it's like we don't know what they're going to say 20 years from now
We
that
don't
we were
know.
that we're doing wrong. I mean, it's the whole idea of like having cigarettes in bed was considered a really important aspect of life, and now it's looked at
Mm.
as oh, don't do that, even though
Uh-huh.
everybody did. All right, let's go in
Uh-huh.
the final
Uh-huh.
story because then I have
The
to
final
get going.
one.
I
The
know
final one. This is
we're
just
speeding.
about
We're in speed
we're
round today.
speeding through. We're speeding through. It don't take long. It don't take long to share news, but here's the last one. Social media lawsuit win is what we're talking about. A young woman won a major lawsuit against Meta and YouTube, claiming their platforms were intentionally designed to be addictive and harmed her mental health. Here we go with mental health again. I wonder if she smoked weed. A jury
Oh man,
agreed and awarded her 6 million with an M, 6 million in
what?
damages. They even went as far as saying the companies acted with malice, oppression, and fraud, which is a pretty strong statement. Both companies said they plan to appeal and argued that mental health issues cannot be blamed on a single platform. Well, I don't know. But this case could open the door for hundreds of similar lawsuits already building up. There's also growing global pressure. Countries are already considering or testing social media restrictions for minors, been doing that for a million years.
Yeah.
So this might be one of those moments where the conversation shifts from user responsibility to corporate accountability. And that's
Or
where that ends. But she
or
won
it becomes
$6
comes a
million.
juries. It could be about the juries as well. If there was a jury, it's kind of like the who's the guy with the lemon pound cake and all that whole thing that keeps showing up. What's the guy's name?
Man, I don't know.
Speaking about high, he sings about like getting high or something like that. And then he
Oh,
what is the
I
guy's
don't
name?
know.
I don't know, but he came out with this whole thing or whatever about Officer Poundcake because he was invaded. And
Uh-huh.
essentially, I love how we're
Oh,
bringing in the marijuana thing and we're bringing in the jury thing.
yeah.
Who is that
Yeah.
guy? I don't know. He wears like
It,
a United States suit and marches
oh, Afro
around.
Man?
Afro Man, that's the name.
Afro Man? Yeah. He just won his lawsuit. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So I'm just
Um,
saying, juries and the judge didn't
mm-hmm.
like the fact or whatever that Afro Man won the lawsuit and even just kind of went to the
Mm-hmm.
juries and is like what went wrong. I think juries are at the point now where they're fed up, and even if
Mm-hmm.
normally like Meta's completely right, they should not have been accused like this and et cetera, and there's owner responsibility. I think juries have just had it at this point, and
I do too.
the only way that this stuff is going to get overturned is essentially with the appeals where juries are no longer involved and other judges can then go and basically make decisions themselves of where exactly they're going to go next with these particular cases.
Yeah, you make a good point too about the juries because although they are supposed to be objective, there's some subjectivity that can, creep its way in. For them to say Meta and YouTube, for them to charge them with making their platforms addictive and harmful to one person's mental health, is it enough to say that person maybe already dealing with the level of mental health? Because I mean, we look at social media. This is where we get our stories from. I mean,
Yeah,
is it impacting our mental health? Like
it is.
where's the line drawn? I mean, it's impact, yeah, but to the point of where it's, it's a thin line. It's a thin line because
Yeah.
yes, we do know that things that are on these platforms can impact, what a person does, what they're doing, the next thing that they do to go viral, whatever. Very dangerous, very, very dangerous stuff. But how did this one person managed to prove that it harmed her mental health and it was a result of Meta and YouTube? And why didn't she have control enough to just stop watching it if her mental health was impacted to where it got so far where she was harmed now and then sued them for $6 million? So is it, again, it goes back to the last thing that I said, is it user responsibility or corporate accountability?
Who knows at this
Yeah,
point?
because Twitter is wild. Okay, Twitter is wild. So you better you type in the wrong thing on the algorithm, mess up your whole algorithm. You got to be careful because Yeah. It's just a lot more that you can see on Twitter than you can on any YouTube platform for sure. But
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
so
but there
that's
you
all
go,
I
and
got
that
though.
brings us to our 15-minute mark. So thank you everybody for
Yep.
joining us. We're probably gonna have another episode next week because again at the
Yeah.
Passover holiday, or we'll figure out how
Yep.
it
Good
works.
Friday's
But
next week and everything. So
I
yeah.
don't know. We're gonna we'll
No,
be in
Good
talks.
Friday's this
So
week. Yeah,
no,
yeah.
yeah. No,
All
no. So
right.
so tomorrow night is when
Starts
it
Passover.
begins. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and then 8 days
Yeah.
of fun. No bread, all
Yeah.
that. All right.
Yeah. No
I
yeast, no bread.
n- I need to log off right now
All right.
because I have to get back to cleaning. But
All right.
I
We'll
will
get
talk
back
to you
to it
later.
next week.
Yep.
All
All right. Have
right.
a good one. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.